My fiancé broke up with me at our rehearsal dinner, holding hands with my brother, announcing to everyone, I would literally die of boredom if I spent one more second with this pathetic loser. I bet he'll die alone and forgotten. She laughed viciously and continued, I was only marrying you for your money, but even that's not worth it when your brother is 10 times the man you'll ever be. The entire room went silent. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just quietly walked out and blocked them both forever. 3 days later, she was sobbing at my doorstep at 3 a.m. You know that moment when your entire world crumbles in front of 50 people? Yeah, that was me 3 months ago. Picture this, fancy rehearsal dinner, candlelight, everyone dressed to the nines, and there I am thinking I'm about to marry the love of my life. Boy, was I wrong. My name's Liam Cross, and let me tell you something, I thought I knew betrayal. I thought I understood what it meant to be stabbed in the back. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what Mia Vale did to me that night. The evening started normal enough. Well, as normal as these things get when you're dropping serious cash on a wedding that's supposed to be the happiest day of your life. Mia looked stunning in her red dress, my brother Jake was cracking jokes as my best man, and our families were mingling like one big happy group. Ever been to one of those events where everything seems perfect on the surface but something just feels off? I should have trusted my gut. The speeches were winding down when Mia stood up. She had this weird smile on her face, not the warm one I fell in love with, but something colder. Something that made my stomach drop without me even knowing why yet. I have something to say, she announced, tapping her champagne glass. The room went quiet, everyone expecting some sweet pre-wedding declaration of love. That's when she reached over and grabbed Jake's hand. My brother's hand. And held it. In front of everyone. I can't do this anymore, she said, her voice carrying across the silent room like a death sentence. I would literally die of boredom if I spent one more second with this pathetic loser. She was looking right at me when she said it. Can you imagine? Your fiancé calling you a pathetic loser in front of your entire family, your friends, everyone who came to celebrate what was supposed to be your happiness? But she wasn't done. Oh no, Mia was just getting started. I bet he'll die alone and forgotten, she laughed, actually laughed, like my pain was the funniest thing in the world. I was only marrying you for your money, but even that's not worth it when your brother is 10 times the man you'll ever be. The silence in that room was deafening. You could hear a pin drop. 50 people just staring, some with their mouths hanging open, others looking away like they couldn't bear to witness what was happening. My mom had tears in her eyes. My dad looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. And Jake? My own brother? He squeezed her hand tighter. I stood there for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 10 seconds. Everyone was waiting for me to explode, to scream, to make a scene. That's what the old Liam would have done. The Liam who wore his heart on his sleeve and fought for everything he believed in. But something ice cold settled in my chest that night. Something that whispered, don't give them the satisfaction. So I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't even raise my voice. I just looked at Mia, then at Jake, and said quietly, I hope you're both very happy together. Then I walked out of that restaurant like I was heading to the grocery store instead of leaving my entire life behind. Behind me, I could hear the chaos starting, people gasping, my parents trying to process what just happened, chairs scraping as the shock wore off and everyone started talking at once. I got in my car, drove home to my apartment, and did something that probably saved my sanity. I blocked both of them. Every number, every social media account, every possible way they could contact me. Gone. Just like that. You might think I spent the next few days crying into my pillow or drinking myself stupid. But here's the thing about betrayal this deep, sometimes it doesn't break you. Sometimes it burns away everything weak in you and leaves behind something harder. Something that knows exactly what it's worth. 3 days later, I was in my kitchen making coffee at 3 a.m. because sleep had become optional, when I heard it. Sobbing. Desperate, ugly crying coming from outside my door. I looked through the peephole and there she was. Mia Vale, the woman who'd humiliated me in front of everyone I cared about, sitting on my doorstep like a broken doll. Her perfectly styled hair was a mess, her makeup was running down her face, and she was wearing sweatpants. Mia never wore sweatpants anywhere. She started pounding on the door. Liam. Liam, please, I know you're in there. I can see your light on. Please, just let me explain. I stood there listening to her fall apart outside my door, and you know what I felt? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was like watching a stranger's drama through a window. I made a mistake, she sobbed. The biggest mistake of my life. Jake. Jake isn't who I thought he was. He's cruel, Liam. He said terrible things to me. He said I was just a cheap way to hurt you and that he never actually wanted me. Interesting how quickly things change when you're not the one holding all the cards anymore, right? She kept going, her voice getting more desperate. He kicked me out tonight. Said he got what he wanted and didn't need me anymore. I have nowhere to go, Liam. Please, I still love you. I never stopped loving you. I actually laughed. Not out loud, but inside, I was laughing at the pure audacity of it all. She still loved me? After telling 50 people I was a pathetic loser she was only using for money? Liam, please. More pounding. I know I hurt you, but I can explain everything. I was scared. I was scared of how much I loved you and I panicked. Jake convinced me that you didn't really love me, that you were just settling. I was confused. Now that was rich. Jake convinced her? Like she was some innocent victim in all this instead of a grown woman who chose to humiliate me in front of everyone I cared about. The sobbing continued for almost an hour. A full hour of her cycling through every excuse in the book. She was sorry. She was confused. She was manipulated. She made a mistake. She still loved me. We could work through this. People make mistakes. Everyone deserves a second chance. Through it all, I just stood there in my kitchen, drinking my coffee and listening to her tear herself apart on my doorstep. And the strangest thing? I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was just cold. Like watching someone else's life play out on a screen. Eventually, she gave up and left. I heard her car start and drive away, and I went back to my coffee like nothing had happened. But here's where the story gets interesting. See, while Mia was busy destroying her life with my brother, I wasn't just sitting around feeling sorry for myself. I was planning. And 3 days gives you a lot of time to plan when you're not sleeping much. Remember how she said she was only marrying me for my money? Well, turns out there were some things about my money that Mia never bothered to learn. Like where it actually came from. See, most people assumed I inherited everything from my grandfather. That's what Jake thought too. That's what Mia thought. Hell, that's what I let them think because it was easier than explaining the truth. But the reality? I earned every penny myself. Started investing when I was 16 with money from summer jobs. Made some very smart choices, some very lucky choices, and by the time I was 25, I was sitting pretty. The inheritance from Grandpa was just the cherry on top. And here's the beautiful part, Jake didn't know any of this. When he decided to steal my fiancé to hurt me, he thought he was also positioning himself to eventually get a piece of that family money through her. Classic Jake, always looking for the angle, always trying to figure out how to get something for nothing. So while they were busy playing house and probably planning how to spend money they thought would eventually be partly theirs, I was making some calls. Some very important calls. You ever wonder how much damage one motivated person can do in 3 days when they know where all the bodies are buried? The first call was to my lawyer. Turns out when someone publicly declares they were only marrying you for your money, that creates some interesting legal situations, especially when there are contracts involved. Wedding contracts, prenups that hadn't been finalized, shared investments that needed to be unwound. Mia was about to discover that money she thought she had access to was about to become very inaccessible very quickly. The second call was to my father. Now, my dad's not a vindictive man, but he's also not stupid. And when his son gets publicly humiliated by his other son and his future daughter-in-law, well, let's just say family dynamics start shifting pretty quickly. Jake worked for Dad's company, lived in a house Dad helped him buy, drove a car that was still technically in Dad's name. Funny how quickly those generous family arrangements can become less generous. The third call was the most important one, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But first, let me paint you a picture of what happened over the next week. Because while I was quietly handling my business, Jake and Mia were busy making a mess of theirs. Turns out, when you build a relationship on betraying someone else, trust doesn't exactly come naturally. Within 4 days of their grand announcement, they were already fighting. Jake started getting paranoid that Mia would do to him what she did to me. Mia started realizing that Jake wasn't actually the upgrade she thought he was just a guy who was willing to stab his own brother in the back, which, when you think about it, isn't exactly relationship material. And the family? Oh, the family was not happy. My parents were disgusted with Jake. My aunts and uncles, who'd known me since I was a baby, were asking uncomfortable questions about what kind of man betrays his own brother. The cousins were picking sides, and guess which side they picked? But here's where it gets really good. Remember that third phone call I mentioned? I called my cousin Miles Gray. Now, Miles is what you might call a social media influencer, though I hate that term. He's got about 2 million followers across various platforms, and he's really good at telling stories. Really, really good. And Miles? He was at the rehearsal dinner. He saw the whole thing. Liam, he said when I called him, I've been waiting for you to call. That was the most brutal thing I've ever witnessed, and I've been wanting to talk about it. Talk about it how? I asked. The way it deserves to be talked about. The way that shows people exactly what kind of person does something like that. Now, I want to be clear about something. I didn't ask Miles to destroy them. I didn't ask him to make them famous for all the wrong reasons. I just told him he had my permission to tell the truth about what happened. And boy, did he tell the truth. Miles has this way of telling stories that makes you feel like you're right there in the room. He doesn't sensationalize, he doesn't exaggerate, he just lays out exactly what happened in a way that makes people understand not just the facts, but the human cost. He told the story of a woman who humiliated a good man in front of his entire family for no reason other than cruelty. He told the story of a brother who betrayed his own blood for a woman who'd already proven she couldn't be trusted. He told it with names changed, of course, but with enough detail that everyone who was there would recognize it. The response was significant. 2 million people heard that story. 2 million people shared it. And some of those people knew people who knew Mia and Jake. Small world, right? Within a week, Mia had lost her job. Not because of anything I did, but because her boss heard the story and realized he couldn't trust someone who'd publicly admit to using people for money. Jake got demoted at Dad's company, officially for performance issues, but we all knew the real reason. But the real kicker? The thing that made all of this worthwhile? Jake came crawling back. 2 weeks after the rehearsal dinner disaster, he showed up at my door. Not crying like Mia had been, but close. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, and his usual cocky demeanor was nowhere to be found. Liam, he said when I opened the door, we need to talk. I leaned against the door frame and crossed my arms. Do we? I messed up, he said. I messed up bad, and I know it. Messed up how, exactly? He looked around nervously, like he was afraid someone might be listening. Can I come in? No. That caught him off guard. Old Liam would have let him in, would have been eager to hear his apology, ready to forgive because that's what family does. New Liam wasn't feeling quite so charitable. Look, he said, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. What I did was wrong. What we did was wrong. We? Mia and I. The whole thing. It was stupid and cruel and I regret it. I just stared at him. Didn't make it easy, didn't jump in to fill the awkward silence. Just let him squirm. The thing is, he continued, it's all falling apart. Mia and I, we're not. It's not working out. And I've lost my position at Dad's company, and people are talking, and you thought you'd come here and apologize so I'd help you fix it? I hoped. I mean, we're brothers, Liam. We've always been brothers. That's when I laughed. Actually laughed, right in his face. Brothers? I said. Jake, let me tell you what brothers do. Brothers protect each other. Brothers have each other's backs. Brothers don't steal each other's fiancés and publicly humiliate each other in front of their entire family. I know, but nothing. You made your choice. You chose her over me, chose to hurt me over being loyal to your own family. And now that it's blown up in your face, now you want to be brothers again? He was starting to look desperate. Liam, please. I know I don't deserve it, but I need your help. Dad won't even look at me. Mom barely speaks to me. And Mia is crazy. She keeps talking about getting back together with you, keeps saying she made a mistake, and when I tell her that's never going to happen, she goes nuts. Sounds like a you problem. Come on, man. We grew up together. We shared a room for 15 years. That has to count for something. I looked at him for a long moment, this person who shared my DNA but had proven he didn't share my values, my loyalty, or my basic human decency. You're right, I said finally. It does count for something. It counts for exactly why what you did hurts so much more than if a stranger had done it. I started to close the door, but he put his hand up to stop it. Wait. Liam, wait. There's something else. Something you need to know. What? He looked around again, then leaned closer. Mia. She's been talking about you. A lot. She's obsessed. She drives by your place, she asks people about what you're doing, she's even been calling your friends trying to get information about whether you're seeing anyone. Now that was interesting. And you're telling me this because? Because I think she might do something crazy. She keeps saying she's going to win you back, That she knows exactly how to make you forgive her. She's got this whole plan, and honestly, it's scaring me. I'll admit, that got my attention. What kind of plan? I don't know all the details, but she keeps talking about making a grand gesture. Something public that will prove how much she loves you and make you take her back. And you're warning me because you're such a good brother? He had the decency to look ashamed. I'm warning you because even though I screwed up, I don't want to see you get hurt worse than you already have been. I stared at him for another long moment, then stepped back and opened the door wider. Come in. He looked surprised but quickly stepped inside before I could change my mind. Sit down, I said, pointing to the couch. And tell me everything you know about this plan. For the next hour, Jake laid out everything Mia had been saying and doing since their relationship imploded. And let me tell you, it was disturbing. She'd been driving by my apartment at all hours, trying to figure out my routine. She'd been calling my friends, pretending to be concerned about my well-being and fishing for information. She'd even contacted my gym, my grocery store, places I went regularly, trying to find out when I'd be there. But the worst part? She'd been planning some kind of public spectacle designed to force me to interact with her. Something at my workplace, in front of my colleagues, where I'd have to either humiliate her publicly or look like the bad guy for rejecting her dramatic gesture. She's lost it, Liam, Jake said. Completely lost it. She talks about you like you're still together, like this whole thing was just a misunderstanding that she can fix if she just finds the right approach. And you're just now deciding to warn me? He looked down at his hands. I kept thinking she'd snap out of it. That she'd realize what she'd done and move on. But it's getting worse, not better. Yesterday she spent 3 hours planning what she called Operation Second Chance and talking about how she was going to make you realize you still loved her. I leaned back in my chair and processed this information. So Mia wasn't just sorry, she was delusional. She actually thought there was a way back from what she'd done. What exactly does this operation involve? She wants to show up at your office with flowers and make this big speech about how she made a mistake and how much she loves you. She thinks if she does it in front of your coworkers, you'll be too polite to reject her and you'll have to at least talk to her. I almost laughed again. Even now, even after everything, she still thought she knew me well enough to manipulate me. There's more, Jake continued. She's been telling people that you two are working things out. Your mutual friends, people from college, she's been calling them and saying that you've been talking and that you're considering giving her another chance. What? She's creating this whole narrative where you're the forgiving boyfriend who's working through things with her. I think she believes if she says it enough, it'll become true. Now I was genuinely angry. It was one thing to be delusional about our relationship. It was another thing entirely to spread lies about me, to involve other people in her fantasy. She needs to stop, I said. I've tried telling her that. We've had huge fights about it. That's part of why things fell apart between us so fast. She's so obsessed with getting you back that she barely acknowledges I exist, except to pump me for information about you. Information like what? Like whether you've been dating anyone. Whether you've seemed sad or angry. Whether you've said anything about her. She wanted me to find out if you'd been checking her social media or asking mutual friends about her. I shook my head. And what did you tell her? The truth. That you blocked both of us and haven't mentioned either of us to anyone as far as I can tell. But she doesn't believe it. She thinks you're just playing hard to get. We sat in silence for a few minutes while I processed all of this. Then I looked at Jake and asked the question that had been nagging at me. Why did you do it? What? The whole thing. The rehearsal dinner. Stealing my fiancé. Why? He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I was jealous. Of what? Of everything. Your success, your money, the way people respect you. The way Mia looked at you like you hung the moon. I spent my whole life being the screw-up while you were the golden child, and I guess I wanted to prove I could take something away from you for once. So you decided to destroy my wedding? I didn't plan it that way. It started as just flirting. Just seeing if I could get her attention. But then she started flirting back, and before I knew it, we were having an affair. An affair. The word hit me like a physical blow. How long? 3 months. 3 months. They'd been sneaking around behind my back for 3 months while I was planning our wedding, choosing flowers, tasting cakes, writing vows. And the rehearsal dinner speech? That was all her. She said she couldn't go through with the wedding, that she'd rather be with me, and she wanted to make it clear to everyone so there'd be no going back. I tried to talk her out of doing it that way, but she said it was the only way to be sure you'd let her go. Let her go? I stood up abruptly. Let her go? Jake, If she'd come to me privately and said she wanted to break up, I would have been heartbroken, but I would have respected her decision. She didn't need to humiliate me in front of everyone I cared about to let her go. I know that now. But at the time, she convinced me that you'd try to talk her out of it, that you'd make her feel guilty for leaving. She said the only way to make a clean break was to make it impossible for you to fight for the relationship. I stared at him, trying to process the level of manipulation and cruelty it took to orchestrate something like that. She played you, I said finally. What? She played you, Jake. Think about it. She was engaged to me, presumably happy enough to plan a wedding and get to the rehearsal dinner. Then suddenly she decides she wants you instead. But instead of handling it like an adult, she creates this massive public spectacle that destroys our family and burns every bridge she has with me. Why would someone do that unless they had an ulterior motive? Jake was staring at me now, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. She wanted the drama, I continued. She wanted the chaos. And she wanted to make sure that when things inevitably fell apart between you two, I'd be so hurt and humiliated that I'd be desperate to have her back. She was setting up her safety net. The color drained from Jake's face as the truth of what I was saying hit him. She used me, he whispered. She used both of us. The difference is, I was an innocent victim. You were a willing accomplice. He buried his face in his hands. I'm such an idiot. Yeah, you are. But right now, that's not the most important problem we have. He looked up. What do you mean? I mean we need to figure out how to handle Mia before she does something that makes this situation even worse. Over the next 2 hours, Jake and I came up with a plan. Not a plan to get back together, that ship had sailed and sunk, but a plan to protect both of us from whatever Operation Second Chance was going to involve. The first step was documentation. Jake was going to start recording their conversations, particularly when she talked about her plans involving me. If she was stalking me and planning to create public scenes, I needed evidence. The second step was coordination. We were going to make sure our stories were straight and that we both understood exactly how to handle any situation she might create. The third step was the most important. We were going to give her exactly what she thought she wanted, but not in the way she expected. What do you mean? Jake asked. She wants a grand gesture? She wants a public scene where she can declare her love and try to manipulate me into taking her back? Fine. Let's give her that opportunity. I don't follow. I smiled for the first time in weeks, and it wasn't a nice smile. She's been telling people we're working things out, right? That I'm considering giving her another chance? Right. And she's planning to show up at my office with flowers and make some big speech? That's what she said. Then here's what we're going to do. I laid out my plan, and by the time I was finished, Jake was staring at me with something that looked like respect mixed with fear. That's brutal, Liam. She chose brutal when she decided to humiliate me in front of 50 people. She chose brutal when she spent 3 months lying to my face while sleeping with my brother. She chose brutal when she decided to stalk me and spread lies about us getting back together. I'm just giving her the same energy she's been giving me. And you're sure this will work? I'm sure this will end it. One way or another, after this, she'll never bother either of us again. We spent the rest of the evening working out the details. Jake would continue to pretend he was still somewhat involved with Mia, gathering information about her plans and reporting back to me. I would let her execute her grand gesture, but I'd be ready for it. And when the moment came, I'd give her something she'd never forget. 3 days later, Jake texted me, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Your office lobby. She's bringing white roses and has a whole speech prepared. I texted back, perfect. Everything's ready on my end. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was nervous, but because I was excited. For weeks, I'd felt powerless, like I was just reacting to the chaos Mia and Jake had created in my life. Tomorrow, I was taking back control. At 1:45 p.m. the next day, I was in my office lobby, pretending to check my phone while keeping an eye on the entrance. My colleagues were going about their normal business, completely unaware that they were about to witness something spectacular. At exactly 2 p.m., Mia walked through the doors. She looked beautiful, I'll give her that. She'd clearly spent hours getting ready, perfect hair, perfect makeup, wearing the blue dress I'd once told her was my favorite. She was carrying a massive bouquet of white roses and wearing the smile I'd fallen in love with 2 years ago. For just a moment, seeing her like that, I almost felt bad about what I was about to do. But then I remembered her voice saying pathetic loser in front of everyone I cared about, and the moment passed. She spotted me immediately and walked over with confidence, like she was sure this was going to work exactly the way she'd planned it. Liam, she said, loud enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. I know you're surprised to see me, but I couldn't wait any longer to tell you how I feel. I looked around at my coworkers, who were starting to pay attention to the drama unfolding in their normally quiet lobby. Perfect. Mia, I said, just as loudly. I can't believe you're here. She beamed, clearly thinking this was going better than expected. I know I hurt you, she continued, launching into what was obviously a rehearsed speech. I know I made mistakes, terrible mistakes that I regret every day. But I also know that what we had was real, and I believe we can find our way back to each other. She held out the roses. These are for you. White roses, for new beginnings. For forgiveness. For the fresh start I'm hoping we can have together. I took the roses, and her face lit up like Christmas morning. She probably thought she'd won. That her plan had worked and I was going to take her back right there in front of everyone. Thank you, I said, loud enough for the growing crowd of onlookers to hear. These are beautiful. Liam, I love you, she said, stepping closer. I know I have no right to ask, but is there any chance you could forgive me? Any chance we could try again? This was it. This was the moment she'd been planning for, the moment she thought would change everything. I looked around at all the faces watching us, then back at her hopeful expression. Actually, Mia, there's something I need to tell you. Her smile faltered slightly, but she nodded. Anything? I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app. Hit play. Suddenly, the lobby was filled with the sound of Mia's voice from the rehearsal dinner. I would literally die of boredom if I spent one more second with this pathetic loser. I bet he'll die alone and forgotten. The color drained from her face as her own words echoed through the lobby, but the recording wasn't done. I was only marrying you for your money, but even that's not worth it when your brother is 10 times the man you'll ever be. Every person in that lobby was now staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. The woman who'd just been professing her love was being confronted with the audio evidence of how she'd publicly humiliated the man she claimed to love. Liam, she whispered, please turn it off. But I wasn't done. You know what, Mia? I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You're right about one thing. What we had was real. It was real betrayal. Real cruelty. Real humiliation. I held up the roses she'd given me. And just like these roses, it's also really dead. Then I walked over to the lobby trash can and dropped the entire bouquet inside. The lobby was dead silent except for the sound of my footsteps as I walked back to where she was standing. You asked if there's any chance I could forgive you, I said. Here's your answer, I forgive you for showing me exactly who you were before I married you. I forgive you for saving me from making the biggest mistake of my life. And I forgive you for teaching me that I deserve so much better than someone who would use me, betray me, and then stalk me when it didn't work out the way you planned. Tears were streaming down her face now, but I wasn't finished. What I don't forgive is you telling people we're working things out when we're not. I don't forgive you driving by my apartment and calling my friends and creating elaborate fantasies about us getting back together. And I definitely don't forgive you thinking you could manipulate me into taking you back by making a scene in front of my coworkers. I looked around at the crowd that had gathered. Everyone here just heard exactly what you really think of me. They heard you admit that you were only marrying me for money and that you think I'm a pathetic loser who'll die alone and forgotten. So tell me, Mia, why exactly would someone take back a person who thinks so little of them? She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I'll tell you why, I continued. Because you thought I was weak. You thought I was desperate. You thought I'd be so grateful for any attention from you that I'd overlook the fact that you destroyed my trust, betrayed my family, and humiliated me in front of everyone I care about. I stepped closer, close enough that only she could hear what I said next. You thought wrong. Then, loud enough for everyone to hear again, Mia, I need you to understand something very clearly. We are never getting back together. Not today, not next week, not ever. What you did at that rehearsal dinner wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. And my choice is to never allow someone who could treat me that way back into my life. She was sobbing now, but I had one more thing to say. I want you to stop driving by my apartment. Stop calling my friends. Stop telling people we're working things out. Stop creating elaborate plans to force me to interact with you. It's over, Mia. It's been over since the moment you decided to humiliate me instead of having an honest conversation about your feelings. I turned to address the crowd that had gathered. I'm sorry you all had to witness this, but I wanted to make sure there were plenty of witnesses so that when Miss Vale here continues to tell people we're getting back together, you'll all know the truth. Then I looked back at her one final time. Goodbye, Mia. I genuinely hope you get the help you need, but get it somewhere far away from me. And with that, I walked to the elevator, leaving her standing in the middle of the lobby, surrounded by strangers who just heard exactly what kind of person she really was. The elevator doors closed, and as I rode up to my floor, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: peace. By the time I got home that evening, the story had already started spreading. Not because I told anyone, but because 20 people had witnessed what happened in the lobby, and news like that travels fast in a small city. Jake texted me around 8 p.m. She called me crying. Said you humiliated her in front of your entire office. I told her she got exactly what she deserved. I texted back, how's she handling it? Not well. She's talking about leaving town. Says she can't show her face anywhere anymore. Good. Liam. Thank you. For what? For handling this the right way. For being better than both of us deserved. I stared at that text for a long time before responding. We're not friends, Jake. What you did to me, what you both did, isn't something I'm going to get over quickly. But I'm glad this is finally done. I understand. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. I didn't respond to that. Some things don't need a response. 3 months later, I heard through the family grapevine that Mia had moved to another state. Jake had apparently learned his lesson and was keeping his head down, trying to rebuild his relationship with our parents and prove he could be trustworthy again. As for me, I was doing better than I'd been in years. The whole experience had stripped away everything fake in my life and left me with something much more valuable: clarity about what I actually wanted and deserved. I'd started dating again, nothing serious, but it was nice to remember what it felt like to be with someone who actually respected me. Someone who saw my success as something to celebrate rather than something to exploit. Someone who would never dream of humiliating me to make themselves feel powerful. But the real victory? The thing that made all of this worthwhile? About 6 months after the lobby incident, I got a call from my cousin Miles. Liam, he said, you need to check your email. Like, right now. Why? What's going on? Just check it. Trust me. I opened my laptop and refreshed my inbox. There, sitting at the top, was an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Thank you for showing me what self-respect looks like." I opened it, and here's what it said. Dear Mr. Cross, you don't know me, but I was in your office lobby 6 months ago when a woman showed up with flowers trying to get back together with you. I heard the recording she made at your rehearsal dinner, and I watched how you handled the situation. I wanted to thank you because watching you stand up for yourself gave me the courage to leave my own toxic relationship. My boyfriend had been cheating on me for months, lying to my face, making me feel like I was crazy for questioning him. After seeing how you refused to let someone back into your life who had treated you poorly, I realized I deserved better too. I left him that same week. It's been 6 months now, and my life is completely different. I'm happier, more confident, and I'm dating someone who treats me the way I should have been treated all along. I know it probably wasn't easy to do what you did, but I wanted you to know that your strength helped someone else find theirs. With gratitude, Sarah. I read that email 3 times, and by the 3rd time, I had tears in my eyes. Not sad tears, proud tears. The worst day of my life had somehow helped a complete stranger find the courage to change hers. But that wasn't the end of it. Over the next few weeks, I got 2 more emails from people who'd been in the lobby that day. Then a message on social media from someone who'd heard the story secondhand. Then another email from someone who'd seen Miles's original video about the rehearsal dinner and had been inspired to set better boundaries in their own relationships. It turns out that standing up for yourself doesn't just change your own life, it gives other people permission to stand up for themselves too. And you know what the most satisfying part of all this was? It wasn't the revenge. It wasn't watching Mia cry in front of my coworkers or seeing Jake lose his job and his girlfriend in the same week. The most satisfying part was realizing that I'd become someone I was proud to be. Someone who knew their worth and wasn't willing to settle for less. Someone who could walk away from toxicity without looking back, not because I was trying to punish anyone, but because I finally understood that I deserved better. The old Liam would have taken Mia back. He would have convinced himself that love means forgiving anything, that everyone deserves a second chance, that fighting for a relationship means accepting whatever treatment you get. The old Liam would have let his loneliness and his fear of starting over convince him to settle for someone who saw him as nothing more than a convenient source of money and status. But the new Liam? The one who'd been forged in the fire of that rehearsal dinner humiliation? He knew better. 8 months after everything went down, I was at a coffee shop when I saw her. Mia. She was sitting alone at a corner table, and she looked different. Smaller somehow. Less confident. The spark that had first attracted me to her was nowhere to be found. She saw me too, and for a moment we just stared at each other across the crowded cafe. Then she got up and walked over. Liam, she said quietly. Can we talk? Just for a minute? I looked at her for a long moment, this person who'd once been the center of my universe and was now just someone I used to know. What is there to talk about, Mia? I want to apologize. Really apologize, not like before when I was just trying to get you back. I want to apologize because I finally understand what I did to you, and I'm sorry. She looked genuine, but I'd learned not to trust my ability to read her. Okay, I said. I'm listening. I was cruel, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Not just wrong, not just mistaken, cruel. I hurt you on purpose because I was angry at myself for falling for Jake's manipulation, and I took it out on you in the most public, humiliating way possible. She paused, gathering her courage. The thing is, I did love you. I loved you so much it scared me, and when Jake started paying attention to me, started telling me that you were just settling for me, that you didn't really see me as an equal partner. I wanted to believe him because it was easier than dealing with my own insecurities. I didn't say anything, just let her talk. But that's not an excuse for what I did. Even if I believed his lies, even if I was confused and scared, there was no excuse for humiliating you the way I did. A decent person would have come to you privately, would have talked through their feelings instead of creating a public spectacle designed to hurt you as much as possible. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I've been in therapy for months, trying to understand why I did what I did. And the truth is, I was jealous of you. Jealous of your success, your confidence, the way people respected you. I felt small next to you, and instead of working on myself, I tried to make you smaller. Finally, she looked directly at me. I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't expect you to. But I needed you to know that I understand now. I understand that what I did was unforgivable, and I understand why you handled it the way you did. You were protecting yourself from someone who had proven they would hurt you for their own selfish reasons. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation, for hidden agendas, for anything that suggested this was just another attempt to get back into my life. But all I saw was genuine remorse and the kind of exhaustion that comes from finally facing the truth about yourself. Thank you for saying that, I said finally. I mean it. It takes courage to admit you were wrong, especially about something this serious. She nodded, tears streaming down her face now. I also want you to know, I continued, that what happened between us taught me something important about myself. It taught me that I'm stronger than I thought I was, and that I deserve to be with someone who sees my success as something to celebrate, not something to resent. You do, she said. You deserve someone amazing. I know, I said, and I meant it. I finally know. We stood there for another moment, two people who'd once planned to spend their lives together, now saying goodbye for real this time. I hope you find happiness, Mia. Real happiness, with someone who brings out the best in you instead of the worst. I hope you do too, she said. Though knowing you, you probably already have. She was right, actually. I had found someone amazing, myself. The version of myself that knew his worth, that set boundaries, that refused to accept less than he deserved. And that relationship, the one with myself, was the foundation that would make all my future relationships stronger. As I watched Mia walk away for the final time, I felt something I hadn't expected, gratitude. Not for what she did to me, but for what it had taught me about what I was capable of. You see, there's something people don't tell you about revenge. They make it seem like it's about hurting the person who hurt you, about making them pay for what they did. But real revenge, the kind that actually matters, isn't about them at all. Real revenge is becoming so much better than you were before they hurt you that their opinion of you becomes irrelevant. Real revenge is building a life so fulfilling, so aligned with your values, so full of people who actually see and appreciate you, that you can't even remember why you thought you needed their approval in the first place. Real revenge is knowing, deep in your bones, that you are worthy of love and respect, and refusing to settle for anything less, not because you're trying to punish anyone, but because you finally understand what you deserve. 3 years later, I'm engaged again. This time to someone who knew about Mia and Jake from the beginning, who heard the whole story and said, "I'm glad that happened to you before we met, because it made you into exactly the kind of person I want to spend my life with." Her name is Nora Hill, and she's everything Mia wasn't: secure in herself, genuinely supportive of my success, incapable of the kind of cruelty that destroys people just to make yourself feel powerful. When I told her about the rehearsal dinner, she didn't pity me or try to fix me. She just said, "That must have been horrible, but look how strong it made you." And you know what the best part is? Jake will be at this wedding too. Not as my best man, that trust was broken forever, but as my brother who learned a hard lesson about loyalty and has spent 3 years proving he understands what family actually means. Will I ever fully forgive him? Probably not. But I've learned that forgiveness isn't always about letting people back into your inner circle. Sometimes it's just about letting go of the anger so it doesn't poison your own happiness. The wedding is next month, and this time, I know with absolute certainty that I'm marrying someone who loves me for who I am, not what I can provide. Someone who would never dream of humiliating me, who sees our relationship as a partnership rather than a transaction. And if anyone tries to object during the ceremony? Well, let's just say I've learned a thing or two about handling dramatic situations with grace and strength. The old me might have been afraid of getting married again, might have let Mia's betrayal make him too scared to trust anyone new. But the new me knows something the old me didn't. When you know your worth, you can spot the people who don't see it from a mile away. More importantly, you can spot the ones who do. So yeah, Mia was right about one thing at that rehearsal dinner. The old Liam probably would have died alone and forgotten, not because he was unlovable, but because he didn't love himself enough to demand better treatment. But the new Liam? The one who walked out of that restaurant with his dignity intact and never looked back? He's living a life that's better than anything he could have imagined when he was settling for someone who saw him as nothing more than a paycheck with a heartbeat. And that, my friends, is the sweetest revenge of all.